Hello, this is another mock-up for something I intend to do later called the Brian Coffee House. And I wanted to take a moment to discuss something that's very timely, which involves the current spat of college protests in favor of Hamas. I don't want to get into all of the details because I want to keep this short. Other than to say there's a lot of things we don't know, and we should perhaps be a little careful about making claims about things happening in a war zone, because often our information is not very good in those circumstances. Often we are trying to assign blame particularly to issues of civilian casualties. That can be a problem because on the one hand Israel is engaged in a war and civilian casualties happen in war, and on the other hand Hamas tends to unfortunately use tactics that seem almost designed to maximize Palestinian civilian casualties. So it's very hard to assign blame at this point. It's very hard to know what's going on, and so I don't want to comment about many aspects of the war. But I do want to counter the opposition to what is called the two-state solution, or those who claim Israel has no right to exist, on the basis of the idea that Israel is a Western colony. In part because as a Christian and as somebody who is a part of a tradition that has long opposed anti-Semitism, I do believe Israel has a right to exist. But I want to explain that in part as a defense of Christianity, but in part to counter this narrative, this simplified narrative of oppressor-oppressed that seems to be going around, especially this idea that oppression is somehow a Western European phenomenon when it isn't. I'm not a fan of colonialism, but many of the governments and states that Western colonial governments replaced were also themselves oppressors. And this is largely true in the Middle East, where the major oppressors have been various Islamic groups, the last of which was the Ottoman Empire. Jews, many Christian groups, many Hindu groups in Ottoman territory were horribly oppressed and had been horribly oppressed by the previous caliphates, as well as by Byzantine Christians, unfortunately, who, in my opinion, were not good representatives of Christianity, but I'll explain that at another time. That's not my topic for today. When the Ottoman Empire was broken up after World War I, the division could not be viewed as equitable. The governments that were formed, including places like Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Jordan, many of these places were carved out in favor of those who had helped the Allies, and they themselves became just a new class of oppressors. For example, the Jordanians expelled the Jews from Jerusalem. Jews had made up the primary population of East Jerusalem for more than 1,000 years, until the 1940s when they were expelled. I guess Palestinian claims about a right of return don't extend to Jews expelled in the 1940s. It was realized and it was recognized after the Second World War that anti-Semitism was a worldwide problem, and it included the West, but it wasn't exclusively the West. And so carving Israel from former Ottoman territory was in many ways just. It was giving the oppressed, to use the critical theories lingo, their own homeland, to give, Middle Eastern Jews a place where they had control over their own destiny was, in everyone's minds, equitable and just, unless one is Islam and believes that only Muslim states should be allowed to exist in the Middle East. So, no, Israel is not just a Western colony. It is in many ways an answer to a long history of oppression. Thank you. I hope you have a good day.